I'll go ahead and call roll. Jacob,
Present.
Matt could not make it today. Adrian is absent. Suen,
Yes.
Patty,
Here.
didn't see Bill come in. Allison,
Present.
Myra,
Here.
Sally,
Here.
Kitty is absent. Tommy, Andre,
Here.
Allie,
Here.
let's go.
Here.
You.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Just wanted to know where next up is public comment. I don't see anyone in the lobby or in the waiting area for public comment. So I think we need to move forward. We'll do
Yeah.
a check later in the meeting.
Before that, let's just quickly, so we've adjusted the agenda to include time for us to discuss any public comments internally. This is something that's been raised at a couple of our past meetings. It's something that came up on the feedback survey that went out. We'll be talking more about the feedback survey later. I just want to impress upon everybody before it ever becomes an issue, because we have no public comments today. This isn't would not be appropriate for this to be Q&A with the person giving the public comment. We do not want to have a back and forth with them, especially if their comment is contentious or maybe not well suited to this venue. Instead, it's an opportunity for us to discuss the public comment internally and then to ask questions of park staff about what follow-up or follow through on that comment looks like. So there's time added to the agenda for public comment discussion, both at the front and at the end of the meeting. We have been pretty light on public comment in the past, so the hope is that, at least for the time being, this isn't going to condense or limit other parts of the agenda. But going forward, we might need to tweak this a bit, because it's going to be, I think, one of the goals for this board in the coming year, and for CWG in particular, to solicit more public comments, which is something that also came up in the feedback survey.
A question.
Mhm.
In the past, we have clarifying questions
Mhm.
to the public figure. Is that something we can continue to do just beyond that is?
Yeah, I think clarifying questions to make sure we understand their intent are one thing, and it involved back and forth, or God forbid, an argument, is what we're trying to avoid.
And in the event of in the event of if there's a lot of public comment and then it takes up too much time, the discretion of the chair. Sometimes if it's a really full queue, some people don't get to speak. And that's just the nature of how the agenda goes, these types of meetings.
So, question here.
Question. So just to clarify, so there's a public comment. Are we going to make sure they understand that what the action item is and when we're gonna follow up?
You're asking if the person giving the public comment will be told explicitly by us, like, what action items are coming out of it and what follow-up is gonna look like.
You know, is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? So that they feel like
So that they feel like they were
heard.
they're heard. Yes.
I think that's something we'll have to address on a case-by-case basis with staff, depending on what the public comment is. I think, a public comment about, like, I'm looking for information about off-leash dogs and what enforcement looks like, is probably easy to follow up. But a public comment of, I don't want an aquatic center built in my neighborhood, is going to require maybe a little bit of a different touch.
Right.
Something that we're going to try to be on top of is also just tracking public comments and what is being said. And if there is follow-up, we can use the time during the public comment discussion in the next meeting to say, hey, at the last public comment, this person gave this, staff did this. And that way we can close that loop.
Do we post public comments?
Yes, in the board minutes, I usually.
But I mean, for the public to see other people's public comments.
If it's in the minutes, then yes. Because the board minutes are.
I guess I'm
personal.
trying to make it easier for people, the public to find it, I guess.
Yeah,
But it wouldn't, like, the minutes are a summarization of their comment versus
Yeah.
like their actual comments. Are you asking like if they're like, could they submit like a written comment, kind of, I don't know, writing it to like the reading room for Forest Service projects where you can go and actually read each person's submission versus a summarization of
Right.
what we
I
heard.
just feel like when it's buried in meeting minutes, it's
Yeah.
harder for the public to get to it. I mean, I know you can say, oh, it's in the meeting.
I think
minutes.
if they have something written, I'm happy to attach like a full quote. But sometimes some people come in, they just
So maybe that's something we
say
consider
it off the cuff.
once if we hopefully we start to get you to understand what that should look like.
Okay, moving on to general announcements.
That be me now? Or did you want me to take that later? I was just looking.
No,
for-
I think now is a good time for that. But let me just say first, something that I'd like to, we've been pretty loose with Robert's Rules of Order. You know, and in the year that I've been here, and I actually think that that's like perfectly okay and a good thing. I think that using Robert's Rules of Order can make meetings less accessible for people because it can become hard to know, like, well, my motion to the motion for rescinding is this. But I think when we're spinning up ad hocs, if we're inviting on ex officio members, like when we do the initial things, I would like to be a little bit more of a stickler about that, just to make sure that we've got a clear record for what we're doing and why. And with that in mind, kicking it to Ally.
Okay, I will be making a motion. So I don't know if folks have heard, but there has been movement on the Harborton PGE reliability project. We had before actually many of you were here, we had an ad hoc committee who worked on that, and I would like to restart it so we can gather information from both the city and the community organizations who were involved in the mediation process so that we can see what direction we want to go. I think once the committee is convened, we can get in more on the details and hopefully invite some of those folks to be able to come and speak. But I am making a motion to reconvene the ad hoc committee, to still be an ad hoc committee just on this singular issue, since it is a pretty complex issue that would affect a 4 or 5 acre swath of, if folks aren't familiar with it, PG wants to develop power lines in a section of Forest Park that would take about 5 acres and cut down about 300 something trees. Some seasonal wetlands would be impacted, and it would be very disruptive to the habitat, which was what we talked about last time.
That's phase one.
Yeah. The city, as well as some community organizations, went into mediation about it. There have been developments there. And so wanting to look into that further so we can see what we want our board position to be, and the ad hoc committee can make a recommendation and write a letter for the board to report. So that is, and I can send some follow-up information if folks are interested on the PG reliability project. But it's, if you're on 30 going up towards Savi, it's a section of land on the left. You have to bushwhack into it. It's not trailed, it's not anything, but it is important for red-legged frogs, which are a sensitive species here and need to cross the road actually to breed in the wetlands across the way.
I second the motion.
So I'm gonna say the motion was that you moved to reconvene the ad hoc PGE.
Can I say?
Yes,
With the intent of writing a letter on behalf of the board.
Yes.
investigating the issue and writing a letter on behalf of it.
Yeah, I guess that was so the goal would be to create a board position on this.
Yes.
All right, Jacob seconds. All voting in favor, please raise your hand.
Actually, one
One more question.
just because I'm unfamiliar with how we do ad hoc, I haven't been able to talk about. How are you thinking about who you're interacting with and choosing to discuss? And is that something that we would be like, would you be updating with us on the board? Or like, how do we choose who we interact with? Because this can be pretty controversial and one-sided, depending on how we do it.
So anyone from the board can join. I guess I would give first priority to the people who had been on the ad hoc committee last time, since they have that background. And then if we have additional spaces, open it back up. But yes, the goal is to hear from the city, to hear from community organizations. It was one of the, in terms of the public weighing in, it was one of the most commented on issues in the history, if not the most commented on issue. Over 1,000 people sent in their comments on this, on PGE's proposal. So it was very controversial. The city council just historically voted it down unanimously. And then they went into mediation to continue the process with the city. So, but yes,
Can we get like the board's previous work on this, just to understand where we landed? And
we
what
can
was
send
done?
them letter
Yeah.
out. Absolutely.
Did it go to Lupa or does it look like it's on its way to Lupa?
Yeah, the next part will be, so the city, I don't want to get too into the weeds because it
Right.
is,
Do we
I
still
will
gotta
say
vote
this
first?
is not a,
Are we voting to put on the ad hoc committee? Let me
Yeah.
take the votes
Yeah.
first.
How many people can be on an ad hoc committee?
As long as.
So
we meet quorum.
hold on. So debate happens before any vote. A motion can be debated, a motion can be amended. You can also debate the amendment. Like I said, this can
Yeah.
this can make everything a bit less accessible. Number of people who can be on an ad hoc is our quorum -1. So as long as we don't hit a quorum,
Okay.
we're okay. And the bylaws say that the board chair can appoint members to an ad hoc, or the board can appoint members to an ad hoc. So since we're doing this by a motion, and I'm not just saying by fiat, we're doing an ad hoc, it's up to all of us to decide who goes onto it, and that's part and parcel of the motion.
And who was on it before? Just
Yeah,
remind
just
us,
having
please.
history of the
raise your
board.
hand if you were on it. Matt was on it, I was on it, Sue, you were on
We
it.
were already on the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that was the ad hoc
Oh.
committee.
Oh,
Patty, were you?
I don't think so.
I
And
think
then we
the
had
other
some
members
people
were
term off.
previous, yeah.
Okay, so 3 folks, me, Matt, and Suen. Suen, would you like to continue?
sure.
Okay, I'll see if Matt would like to continue. Are there any folks here who would then like to also? Sally?
I would hop on it.
Okay, Sally and Tom.
Got it.
Great.
Anybody else?
Patty,
We could take 6.
I'm good.
you good?
All right, I'll put, if all right, I would join it as well. I'll probably be hit and miss for actual attendance, but I think that would be good. And then Michelle, I'm taking an action item down for us to summarize and send out to everybody, the previous ad hocs work and previous interaction on.
I can pull up the letter right now.
Thank you. Just having context there is.
I can also pull up older briefing memos and presentations that we did when we presented about it in the past.
Is there a printed version of the updated agendas?
That-
I can make a run for printout.
Yeah, if you could, I just want to print.
Oh,
it. Yeah, yeah. thank you.
Okay, and the ad hocs, Tommy, Ally,
you.
Matt, Sweat, myself, on this anyone.
Say that one more time.
Yep. Six, excellent. I love having full staff groups. Okay, any more debate, any more questions? Okay, all in favor?
Anyone opposed?
I don't vote. You're looking at
Anyone opposed?
me.
Anyone abstaining? All right, passes unanimously.
We can need that gavel back.
That's okay. Your role is to crush your arms.
Would you like a
Oh.
gavel, Jacob?
I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you, though.
Okay, and there's gonna be some more motions later on in this meeting because we want to bring some ex officio members on, or at least start a conversation about bringing some more ex officio members on. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But I think for right now, that's it, and we can move on to approval of the minutes from June. The standard reminder that if you were not present in June, please please abstain on your vote for this. We get a motion from not the chair to approve the minutes.
Approved.
Do we have a second?
Thank you. All right, all in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions?
I think I was at it, but I can't remember.
You were there.
Okay. But
Okay.
I wasn't here to make that.
Approved unanimously, chair not voting.
Perfect. Noted.
All right. We are 20 minutes ahead of schedule, and I think based on the agenda we put together for today, that might be a theme for the day. Our portions of discussion later during the retreat about report to council and our work plan for the year and prioritization, that's where we might go over, but that also might prove to be a pretty short discussion. We're going to find out. So for right now, with 20 minutes of extra time for you, kick it to the director's report.
All right.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Actually, I just sent Michelle you the link. For whatever reason, it wasn't wanting me to pull it up on the screen. So I'm Art Pierce, interim director for Parks of week 5 in this role. So really just getting my feet under me in terms of understanding all the needs of parks. But my background, I've been with the city for 28 years, starting in 1998. So have been around city systems, understanding how to sort of curate energy and direction, both politically and with community. For many, many years, worked in North Portland on the Interstate Max line, was one of the first projects I worked on. Spent many years focused on South Waterfront, developing out actually in partnership with Parks, the parks, streets, and built the aerial tram. And then was working on additional light rail lines, the Orange Line to Milwaukee, and other projects. And then I became planning manager for the Transportation Department 14 years ago. And then we grew that to combine the long range transportation planning, all of the capital project delivery, as well as all the people facing programs, bike share and Safe Routes to School and all those things. And really framing that as the change management office for the Bureau of Transportation. So what is our long range vision? What are the physical interventions that we do to help change and shape the city? And then what are the sort of culture forming activities that we can curate to help people sort of take advantage of how the city is changing and successfully navigate the city. So big change to focus all that kind of background onto parks. So I'm really in this learning phase, I guess I would say at this point, and relying a lot on the executive team at Parks to kind of get up to speed on what are the major dynamics and issues that we need to be putting energy on. But really excited to be given this opportunity to jump in and sort of shift my attention within a place that I've really cared about for so many years. From a personal perspective, parks are very formative and have been very formative to my time in Portland. I actually live very close to Grant Park, so this morning walking my dog around Grant Park, it's always a beautiful spot to be. But I've spent many years playing Ultimate Frisbee in our parks, and then coached Ultimate Frisbee for 10 years as my son went from elementary school to high school. So I spent just a lot of time both on the rec side and the nature side. Spent a lot of time in Forest Park, trail running as well. And my son is actually a longer term parks employee than I. He's in his 4th year as a lifeguard at Grant. So have a lot of sort of interesting new connections. Also, I'm a musician, so seeing some new connections in with some of the activities around parks. I play the drums and mandolin and sing in the band. So lots of fun little mixers. So that's maybe the first topic up there in terms of introduction and background in the city. Any questions on that? Maybe I'll so one jump at a time. So we thought it might be interesting to see if I can frame up sort of some initial perspectives, and I was trying to think of the way to sort of frame it with the title. So I think my observation of this first month could be titled sort of this discovery of the hidden work of hospitality. I've always framed my work, and I've understood the work of working in public service as being in the hospitality industry. You're framing up a city to be hospitable to the people living there, for the businesses that want to work there. And so from a transportation frame, that's around ease of mobility for people and for goods. But even so much more directly for parks, recreation, the way we're curating natural spaces, the way we're the day-to-day care of the developed parks, and the sort of day-to-day care and opening and management of community centers and recreation facilities is the act of hospitality. And you forget how much work goes into it when you're just, when someone has a great dinner party, you're like, oh, that was so easy for them. You don't realize all the work that went into that hospitality. And if they're doing that job well, that all that work is invisible because you're not wondering why there are lights strung up. The lights were already strung up, so when it got dark, you can all see each other, those kind of things. And that is, I guess, what I'm observing is the sort of under highlighted work of so many staff within the Parks and Recreation Department. They are doing this invisible work that makes all of these things happen. seamlessly and fluidly. So you don't notice them because you didn't run into a conflict because someone had already attended to that work. So really impressed by everything I've been exposed to so far. I'm really excited to figure out how to kind of lift up that work more visibly and make sure that community and council and others understand just how much work goes into curating spaces and curating sort of successful experiences for community. So that's yeah, I think it's a good place to stop. Any? Yeah, go ahead.
So you say you're interim.
Yeah, I jumps right into the next topic. So this is, I was asked to jump into a 6-month role in this, while the city administrator goes through a recruitment for a broader, for the longer term position. I understand they're working with a recruiting firm to ramp up a more formal process. And we expect it to commence in the next couple months, but I haven't heard a more detailed update, exact timing. And I'll have the opportunity to apply to maybe try to stay longer. But if I'm not the right fit, we're sort of in a, I guess, a dating phase with it. Like, is Parks good for me? Am I good for Parks? And if not, I have a ability to go back to Peabody and continue to do the work that I was doing there as well. So.
Do you see any role of the Parks Board involved with review, the selection of interview?
I would expect so. I haven't had a conversation with the city administrator or deputy city administrator about it, but I would certainly think that would be the convention. There would be a role for some of the, particularly the formalized partners. So you would be one of those entities that would probably have a more formal role, or maybe there'd be more informal socialization with the broader set of friends groups and things. But we will certainly remember to highlight that as they're working on that sort of overall process.
We can make that ask to the DC.
Yeah.
Has that happened in the past? I mean, and Dina probably would have been the
This is
most
before
recent.
my time, so I don't remember. I want to say there was something, or at least some sort of introduction.
I know the Parks Foundation was part of like the interview panel, and I would assume the Parks Board would have been too.
Okay, just
There's no
curious.
one here who was here before.
No, I know, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah.
Who was here?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Ellie, I think you're the most soon. Oh, yeah. Jessica and Allie are more senior.
You're a senior.
Before I go on to any other sort of questions or thoughts or honestly suggestions, as I'm sort of getting to know Parks, getting to know our work with you, if you have suggestions on where I should show up and who I should meet, I'm really open to.
I mean, my question is kind of blending introduction and perspective, but you talked a lot about change management, sort of like what you're thinking about and working on right now, but I'm curious, like, what would be your vision for Portland Parks and Rec? I mean, over the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years, if you had to have like a, what would be your major goal for the?
One of the very key elements is around sustainable funding, of course. It's very hard for a public agency to have kind of a positive embracing posture to it when it is so under-resourced. So I think that really is a very important first step, is continuing to really stay focused on the ability for the Bureau to have the right resources to continue with the day-to-day work, start making headway against deferred maintenance of those activities. And then with the right resourcing in the right environments, being able to embrace partnership with outside groups. Part of what I think has happened as a dynamic that honestly happened over at Peabody as well, as with reduced resources, the body starts to sort of retreat, right, into a set of core activities. And it's just very hard to engage with external parties when you're sort of so in preservation mode as a sort of survival mode as an entity. And so with additional resourcing, I think that there's a lot of possibility for deeper partnership and engagement with all the people that love natural spaces and that develop parks in Portland and want to have ways to contribute both their time and their resources towards that. So that feels like sort of in a series of steps we can focus on the composure and posture of the Bureau, and then how it's being sort of offered to Portland for formally. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of that also, reason why I'm really thinking about the hidden work of hospitality is that there's also, I think, a feeling from those that are doing that hidden work that they are under-recognized and under-resourced and undervalued. And so there's a series of moves of helping them understand their value and highlight their value so that they're not feeling sort of extracted from as we try to do more, but they're feeling adequately prepared to do that.
Go ahead.
I assume you won't be engaging at our board retreat after lunch.
No.
Okay. And this is probably the opportunity for us to maybe share something that for a long-term relationship, whether it's 6 months, 6 years, 60 years, who knows, but it seems like we have a body of very smart brains here, big hearts, and we have always been identified as an advisory board. To whom? How? That's something that we will be kind of discussing in the afternoon, but that kind of discussion sometimes will be important to be able to land on someone, like if you can hear us.
Yeah.
You will be able to amplify that to the council, the mayor. And perhaps our role is also, we're not just advocating for the community, but as well as for staff. And I think there's a lot of times, at least my perspective is that we have a lot of goals and wishes and visions, but then somehow decision is coming down, top down. That's already decided.
Right.
It's too late. Or that's too early, don't worry about it. So we're like, okay, who are we representing? And I think our time and collective talent will be best applied when we know the purpose and the approach and venue and who is benefiting that. Hopefully be the staff as well as community. We have a very, very good pool of staff members, very loyal. And when people are cut away, we can't even find out why. And that sometimes it hurts the sense of trust and effort. We feel very deflated after a while.
That's actually a very common dynamic amongst city agencies and advisory committees. So PBOT has a whole number of advisory bodies as well. And there's a similar dynamic of sort of how best to create the whole together. So no, I think it's really good commentary worth understanding deeper. I haven't read your charter, so that's like probably some background homework I should do. Is like how are you defined, in writing? Because that also helps to frame up. I think you're advisory to me, but I don't actually know. And city council. So it's the same as some of our other
Original
committees. So
bylaws had said advisory to the Parks Commissioner, which is no longer.
oh, that's interesting.
And so there's some need for clarity, and this also goes with the advisory enhancement. Our advisory bodies enhancement project as it goes on.
Right.
We'll
So
be asking for clarity.
So there may
on
be
that.
clarity coming down as well. But I do think I'll spend some time with Michelle getting a little bit smarter on how the charter is framed, just to make sure I understand it and I'm not sort of misframing this. But I guess one thing I didn't say in the introduction, the city and city agencies need help always. And I think when we forget that, we sort of lose the importance of the whole system of how we are supposed to be in service, but not alone in this endeavor. I think this group and other groups, particularly for parks, there's so many groups formed around supporting, but perhaps without clarity of exactly what your role and function are. Feels like there's a lot of work there for sure. Yeah, agreed.
So building off that, couple of weeks ago, there was an issue that hit the news about a water slide that was disallowed at a park in Portland. I reached out by email and we had a quick conversation about that, and there was excellent turnaround time in the Parks Department on that. Is that workflow appropriate and desirable going forward, where if there's hot issues or just things that we want to communicate quickly, we can run information from the board through the chair directly to you?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Please CC me.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle.
So
Let me make a note of that.
Yes, like that sounds great.
Always CC Michelle.
I am technically the liaison.
More generally though, how do you want information from the board coming to you if it's not on hot issues? Do you want us to run information through your staff? Do you want us coming to you directly? I think there's kind of like a who, what, where, when, how, and why.
I think continuing to
advice.
focus through Michelle as sort of the switchboard of engagement is that sometimes I'll be the best person to engage, but other times I may not be. And so it'd be sort of linking you directly with the executive team member on the Parks team that might be the most knowledgeable to go deeper with you. Probably.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, maybe should I keep going?
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep going. So I dropped some quick hot topics that popped to mind, but it's been such a crazy month. I'm sure I've missed things. Right as I was coming on, Del Sol Park opened. I hope you were either there for the opening or have got to visit it in the last month. Such a great contribution to downtown recovery and revitalization. It's such a good example of partnership with private parties and the downtown clean and safe in the programming and curation of that space. So really excited to see that happening. Also thought it was interesting the Forest Park shuttle launching. It's just an interesting example of innovation and a sort of cross partnership with sort of understanding the importance of mobility solutions alongside the curation of space. So I think I actually have not dug deep into that yet, but I think that's really interesting and notable that the Parks Department is working to create those access solutions. Are really important. Maybe more of an FYI than anything else, but the park rangers have relocated their office from St. John's down to the First and Davis parking garage office environment. It used to be the transit police long ago. But so they're able to be more proximate to downtown park location. That'll be really well. And they're also more centrally located in terms of their disbursement to east and west directions. We are really at the final moment of negotiations with the U.S. Tennis Center. And so we expect actually maybe even this afternoon to get the city administrators approval for that. So that's pretty exciting in terms of a lot of work went in really the previous director finalizing that process. I did also include the Brooklyn Park slide. It was maybe my first crisis. And so it's just an interesting moment to realize honestly about how misunderstandings happen and people derive intention into those misunderstandings, both community and city staff, and how we have to sort of sometimes give those moments just a little bit of grace and not take any of that too personally. I really like water slides for the record. Myself personally, so like in terms of not that we're going to start a water slide initiative, but I think it's I think we have a good solution in terms of sort of restarting the partnership with the Brooklyn Park Friends group, and with better clarity on terms of that it wasn't documented in the permit, I guess was one of the lessons, and also their understanding of the potential harm to the sports field turf, that's something we need their help to attend to make sure that it doesn't lead to a sports injury or some other sort of unintended consequence. Like that's where those dots weren't fully connected, I think, in terms of what could happen if you created too much damage in a big puddle at the bottom of the water slide for other parks.
Can you share a bit more about that?
Sure.
I missed the news.
Oh, sure.
So
Since 1972 or 3, there has been a tradition of a water slide at Brooklyn Park.
Like a slip and slide.
Slip and slide, yeah.
Like a
Thank you.
giant-
Use the wrong word, yeah.
DIY.
Slip and slide, yeah, slip and slide, thank you. That used to be done in partnership with the Parks Department. 2017, I think, roughly. Parks Department shifted its energy elsewhere, but the neighborhood groups still kept this tradition going only when it's over 90 degrees. And even a solution ran a hose from a neighbor to bring the water in, because that was one of the other. So very much community run, and was done to some level in partnership with the staff that run that particular park. I think even the storage of the water slide itself was in maybe a park's shed. About just a couple weeks ago, a houseless person was maybe sleeping on the slide that had been left out and started a fire on it that damaged the slide. And so another city agency, PMO, came and removed the slide. So when community members were trying to figure out what happened and how to get it back, they ended up asking the sort of parks permit staff about the water slide, and they said, well, we don't permit water slides, which became, right, you can't have, like, there's a new policy frame, which is not actually true, so it sort of escalated into a whole bunch of attribution of intent that really wasn't there. So it just took a little while to sort of unravel the various misunderstandings.
The slide sounds like a lot of fun.
I know. I'm still scheming to get out there at some point. So.
Did they get a slide back?
I actually don't know what's the current.
And is it
Did they get a green light to bring it?
Yeah. We're good to go. I'm not sure actually the rest of the details. Yeah.
So it's no longer a gorilla water slide, it's legit. Yeah.
I think, it's still not in their permit. What we asked them to do is in next year's permit, highlight that that's one of the activities, and that'll allow us to make sure that the best practices are documented in the permit. So it's just bringing it a little bit more clearly into the process.
I love this one was running a hose from the yard.
All
So
Let's do this. I'll make it happen.
That's cool. I lived over there for a while, years ago.
We already had some discussion around PGT and Harborton, so I think that just highlighting that is sort of continued process. PGE, my understanding is PGE has resubmitted their application with after additional consultation and guidance from the city administrator. And it's in review for completeness right now, is where I understand it is. Actually don't know more. I'm not drawn in yet.
Can you share more about sort of where we're at with the USTA negotiations, like
Yes.
kind of the terms, and then as city council, I struggle tracking it, like city council has approved it, and so now you're in final negotiations?
This is just going to be approved by the city administrator, so it
Okay.
will not be a council action. So we expect to, assuming all the final pieces come together, be able to announce that we're transitioning management to USTA. That announcement probably will come out in the next maybe days, honestly. We're looking at the end of the month as when we'll make that sort of handoff. And then there's a series of months of new repairs and upgrades that they'll be investing in.
So they're taking on like the deferred.
They're taking on a whole bunch of deferred maintenance, making a bunch of investment, replacing the roof, those kind of elements.
Yeah.
Anything else I missed? Yeah.
So there's two agreements. There's a lease agreement for the USTA facility that would be 25 years, but with an optional 5-year automatic renewal. So effectively 30 years if they so choose. There's also a companion agreement for outdoor courts at 6 sites. That's just some summertime hours. And that's effectively a continuation of an outdoor partnership agreement we've already had for the last 10 years. So that allows them effectively to run some summer camps in the summertime at 6 parks. And yes, they will be making some initial 2.3 million is what they think capital maintenance repairs to the facility, replacing the bubble, the roof, or the big ones. And they will pay for the ongoing operations of the facility. So that will be some kind of ongoing budgetary savings from the Bureau side. The personnel that work there are going to be affected. USTA will be offering first round interviews to all personnel. And we have sort of a letter of agreement with LIUNA, the labor union, represents some of those positions around kind of how to ensure that staff are on kind of recall lists, how that staff can be supported with benefits, et cetera, as a result of this impact.
And then the access pass, still the same program?
Nope, so it'll be entirely operated by USDA. It's not gonna be like a PPNR program. They are doing all programming. They do have their own scholarship program and they're very committed to offering kind of combinations of access to scholarships. They also do run a variety of just free programs and free times as well. They have a lot of partnerships that they work with, very interested in offering free reduced cost access for example, schools using the facility. So it will be their own program. It won't be you go on a parks reservation site.
So
you
what's
get-
the relationship of them and parks? And is there any so-called oversight from parks on program?
Not on the program.
Nope, not on the programming side. They will be submitting annual reports. We've asked them to talk about who's using the facility, even the demographics of users that they're seeing. So we'll be reviewing those and we'll have a chance to enter into conversations with them annually if we're not seeing kind of that they're meeting the mutual intent of the agreement. But we are not doing kind of oversight beyond that of their programming. It really is them taking on.
So the parks has no leverage then, other than just have conversations?
We can enter into non-binding mediation if we need to, if it rises to that level, but beyond that, no.
Is this similar to like PCU and Buckman Field? Does PCU take on the like maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of Buckman too?
I don't personally know
Oh,
enough
okay.
about that one to know.
Yeah,
how so-
cool. And then my last question, so is this cost reduction on like the deferred maintenance, but more so on the operations? Is that reflected in the budget this year?
It's already.
It was, okay.
So with the construction or the maintenance for the bubble, are we expecting a closure for PTC happening this fall? Yes. What's in the
Anticipated September 1st through December 1st.
December 1st? Okay. And then second question, for programming, do you expect it to, or have you seen what programming will look like? Will it mirror something like the Vancouver Tennis Center?
Yeah, I have not seen their final plan, but I
Okay.
think that's their intent.
'Cause I know a comment I've had with other tennis players is that the pricing for everything will now go up, like much higher,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a different prices.
yeah. More expensive, okay. So it's a 25-year lease, possibly 30. Is there any sort of escape hatch before that 25 years if things really look like they're going sideways?
Yeah, there is kind of if they're in violation of terms of the lease, yeah.
So now one of the concerns that's always been voiced here is about equity and access, if access pass isn't being honored anymore, but there is like some sort of scheme around, I think you called it like scholarship programs, and like some sort of subsidy for free and reduced cost access programs. Is there going to be tracking for how many people are accessing the facility with these scholarship programs or free and reduced cost schemes? And comparing that to how many people were accessing the facility using Access Pass or something similar before.
Yeah, so that will be part of what they submit in their annual report of kind of who they're serving, how they're serving them. We will still be planning on doing, we do these community insight surveys of community typically every 5 years or so. And we ask questions more globally around who's experiencing cost as a barrier. So we'll have a chance to still ask that and on our end see kind of what the community experience around cost as a barrier to program access is, and if we're seeing changes in that as well.
And do we have a hard number for how many people in the last year or last 5 years have used the tennis center using Access Pass?
Yes, last fiscal year
Yes.
was just a little over 1,000.
Okay, so we will be able to get an apples to apples comparison.
Yes, people that use the access pass can step in, as we all know with the access pass, it can be at different levels of access, so sometimes it's at. It can be at 25, 50, 75 or 90% off of the rate. We don't offer any free classes at Portland Tennis Center currently in there, and so the access pass then is applied based on where people opt in to the access discount program. So there's not overall totals, but we do have those broken down as well. But then we'll be looking at those with annual reports and looking to see what kind of free programming they're offering, what kind of their pricing structure is, and then compare that against their scholarship program. So
Very good. So advisory body, advice. I think making that apples to apples comparison very transparent is a way of building trust, especially if for a future where the Parks Department perhaps tries to offload other assets that make more sense off our balance sheet. And trying to obscure an apples to apples comparison by saying like, oh, well, 1,000 people used it at different levels before, and now there's this like tiered scholarship program, but not making it totally clear, like just what the actual impact on equity is, I think would be disadvantageous. And inversely, I think making it a clear comparison so you can say either honestly, you know, there were some equity impacts, but that was going to happen and it's we're worth it on balance, or there were no equity impacts. Like we were able to maintain, you know, the status quo ex ante. Either way, I think it'd be very advantageous to make that front and center in the annual report about this.
Maybe before going to the other ones, just on the left-hand column, I threw in some elements around council engagement. So what we so before my time, the urban forestry commission appointments occurred in May. I was sort of brought in just through the U.S. Tennis Center conversations in June alongside Director Szymanski. In sort of these upcoming ones are now me. One of the things that I've been doing is doing one-on-one council priority conversations, just to better understand kind of their perspective on the parks system, where there might be priorities, where there might be constituent concerns they're hearing. And it's just helpful to sort of round out my understanding of each of their perspectives on the park system. And I think hopefully we find some through lines of where there's numerous council members who have particular things they want to work on that could become essentially like a legislative agenda working with the council offices.
Are you able to share some of like the I don't know, high level takeaways from those conversations? So that's something that we're trying to better understand council and our relationship and their interests. And so
Yep.
you're able to.
For sure.
figure
Yeah.
out, that'd be great.
At this point, we've done 3 or 4 of them. So it's still sort of not a through line yet, but generally a lot of desire for more. Yes, I would say, both in terms of more facilities and more services and even more free services. So what's always interesting about that is that that ambition needs to come back then to council, and that there's then decisions that they would need to make to enable that. So that's partially why I wanted to do this. It's just like, let us know what you're hoping for, and then we can figure out how to turn those into informed decisions that they may be able to make with us.
Yeah, and if you're able to share some of that, see where we can plug in as well. That
For
would
sure.
be
Yep.
their
Okay. Yeah.
interest
You bet.
and
That makes total
Yeah,
sense.
you can bucket it.
Yep. Yeah.
high
I think
level,
by the
but-
time we get to this top, Riley, have you guys been introduced to Riley and Sarah?
I was gonna have them introduce themselves maybe in the next board meeting.
So maybe we'll introduce them in the next meeting. There are 2 staff that have joined the director's office, particularly focused on constituent and council kind of conversations as well as parks partnerships. So yeah, that would be a great agenda item for future. But they've been joining me on those conversations and are going to try to sort of help me make sense of the conversations afterwards. With the urban forestry team, we have done a number of updates to council offices about the tree code update, policy update work, which maybe even makes sense to have as a briefing with this group if that hasn't happened. So maybe, you know, that team come and give you a briefing on the upcoming process that they're doing for Title 11. Just this week, we went to the Public Works Committee to talk about the Southwest Waterfront design competition work. I also got to star in I'm social media famous this week for standing in the river and talking about potential uses in the waterfront, which is great. It was a fun way to stir up some. If you haven't seen the video, it's pretty silly.
You should do more of those.
Sure, I'm happy to.
PR.
Yeah, the team was like, "Are you sure Art will do it?" I was like, "Art will do it." Sure. No, I like being silly, so happy to do it. If you haven't seen it, we can send you a link to it. Yeah.
Send us a link.
And then next month, Kelly Torres and I will be at the Public Works Committee to talk about parks partnerships, kind of just highlighting for them this large body of partnerships that are sort of going on in various forms. And with, I think, Councilor Clark's desire to maybe have a resolution go into the full council that is, I think, encouraging us to continue with work partnerships. That would, I guess, commence later this fall. Back over to the right-hand column. Core services realignments are underway, and so we're sort of in the active moment of change management of people moving with new teams and understanding the sort of work program alignments. A lot of discussion amongst bureau directors around service level agreements to make sure that we're still able to get the work done, even if it's being done in a different way. Some staff's roles, most of them have happened, some are still underway, and there's another round of additional alignments that will happen this fall. So it's a changing city. As someone who's been here a long time, everything is sort of new again. So we can kind of keep you apprised. I don't think we honestly know the trade-offs yet. Those will kind of start appearing over time as we start discovering, particularly with the reductions that were embedded in that. So some of it is continuing the work, but different pathways. The other is what aren't we still able to do that we were able to do with a reduction overall in force in those spaces. But that could be a good conversation to keep you up to prize to, because that's a great place for you to then help us give council feedback on the implications of these choices. Budget wrap up. The main upside is there was sort of a little bit of a mini second budget conversation that council did a couple weeks ago, and that did result in restoration of 2 positions in the parks team. Otherwise, the other proposed budget would have had a more significant restoration of parks positions that one did not go forward. I think Claudio's on vacation, but maybe at one of the future meetings we can, if there's sort of more.
Do it more thorough.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna bring something up and share the screen, but
Okay. Yeah, go for
I'll go
it.
through it.
Maybe while you're doing that, the other thing I just want to highlight, there's so much happening right now in terms of summer events. So if you haven't gotten out with friends and family, there is just constantly something going on in our parks, and the Free for All series is just so great.
Patty, if you don't mind, I'll just briefly share this. So Jacob shared with me kind of the talking points that folks that spoke with council on that were in the proposed budget. I just wanted to give you a visual on some of the things that was asked by the folks doing the advocacy this budget cycle. I had one of our financial analysts go through if there was any change. I regretfully informed that every single ask was not reinstated for the cut, and that they were kept in during the adopted budget. So
When you say they, were they?
Council voted to keep those proposed cuts that were asked by council.
So there were no changes.
There's no changes.
Little bit of like extra background here. When there was this like second bite at the apple on the budget, and there were these 2 competing amendment packages. One of them, yes, did not add any of these back in. The other one added about half of these, clawed back like the funding for about half of these line items, and then a handful of other line items that we had not flagged as high priority. And to be clear, we prioritized these in the ad hoc, not based on impact, but based on like these being really easy to understand, hard and fast items. Like one of them on here is some tens of thousands of dollars for replacing playground equipment. We thought like going to city council, this is an easy one to say like, hey, your budget is stripping playground equipment funding. Like maybe we can have a conversation about getting that back in. So there were a lot of deserving programs that are not included on this list. So we did reach out to councilors around this second round of second bite of the apple on budget. that was actively solicited by counselors reaching out to us, which is a very positive sign, because that means that our prior advocacy was noticed and we were like counted as a stakeholder. But this is where it ended up. Kicking it back to you to see it, because I
I
have.
would just like my personal perspective is that this is the board's first time really diving into this budget cycle. And it was kind of also the bureau's first time. Amanda could probably attest, since she helped kind of lead the bureau on how we approached the budget this year. A lot of things were new and different. And so I want to say, like, please don't be discouraged by the fact that there were no changes. I think keeping on what you're doing, it's a new thing that they're not used to. But I think persistence would be, there could be some change in the future.
Yeah. This is how advocacy work goes. You fight and you lose, and you fight and you lose, and you fight and you lose, and then you fight and you win, and it's great, and then you fight and you lose again. It's an exercise.
That's nice.
It's an exercise in persistence.
That's right.
Do we have any statements from Parks about what the impacts of these are going to be, since they're all going to happen now?
I think we're still figuring that out.
Okay, that's something that we would like to have communicated.
Okay. I will
Just
ask the finance.
a little comment. From the public's perspective, it's all about optics. And people don't dive into the weeds to figure out the nuance. So the big picture, when everything on the news is about the deal with glaciers. And meanwhile, we also see things are falling apart or not open and things like that. People just see like left side or right side. And it's very hard as a public the community side to be able to appreciate a lot of hard work. The city council, everybody's trying to make something happen. But I think a lot of times is really need to look at what does that mean to a general public? How do they feel? It's hard when people, it's like, no, I lose hope.
Yeah, so part of why we chose the specific line items that we did is we were looking for things that would be hyper visible. Degradation of park assets is something that I think people will really be able to notice with their eyes as they even just walk by parks. Two of the line items on there were cutting funds for watering grass fields, and that's kicking in now. So it's not going to be immediately noticeable, but this time next summer, if people go to their park and the field is all dead, dry grass, and they think back and they'll be able to say, wasn't like this in the past, what happened? Yeah, so that's something that I think is very front of mind for us, and that we were really trying to impart on city council.
Just trying to find a way to be more effective. I mean, I think our hearts are there. It's just how can our work be more effective? And when you're always given the hand, it's like, we got other things to worry about.
Or communicate it, I
Yeah.
think,
How
you know,
can we-
because no one knows what we're fighting for, that we're
Yeah.
fighting for them, and how do they know? Because you see the results, it doesn't look like that. And can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I don't know why this came into my mind, and I don't know how it fits in here, but when we're talking about tennis, my mind goes back to the pools. Because fine, North Portland's gonna get full eventually. But we have pools that are at end of life. And that's gonna be another one of those things. Is that gonna be something that becomes so-called privatized too, to make it more economical? I just feel like we can't let that kind of, okay, we got our North Park pool, but we have a problem with pools. And they are used in Portland, you know, your lifeguard at Granite, they're all kind of at that end. And so I feel like we need to keep that on the radar too, because I think privatizing will start to be something that becomes the solution. And then you lose control, and and then that equity comes in. So. just putting that up.
Yeah, I think that's right. Pools. I mean, I use the pool all the time, so yeah. But and kind of getting back to what you said, Son, I feel like, and I don't know where this fits in our conversation today or not, but I don't want to lose touch with the fact that I think this board doesn't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily lean into like, here's one side and here's how we're going to back up or not, without really highlighting the impacts of the process. And so I think that's where your point really is on like, how do we highlight the process that goes into decision making, the different perspectives that go into decision making, the impacts that we're seeing and the lessons we learned. And so that's where I hope we can really lean in and help with that communication around what, not necessarily what is the outcome, and yeah, people see it and oh, this is where it comes from, but how did we get here? And that can help shape then where are we going. So it's very similar. I think there's a really thin line on how we do it. And I just want to make sure that we are constantly using that as a compass to think about the sort of gray and messy area of just all the complexities that go into these things and putting them into the larger perspective of, okay, so if we did cut this, and sometimes I think we do have to recognize that there are going to be cuts and maybe that's a hard decision, but it has to be done. And so how are we going to stand up as a board behind decisions like that and say, okay, like this was hard and that grass is dead, but in the bigger picture, we saved this, or, you know, that grass is dead and we stopped watering it because we are in fire season and we don't want to do that, or like, you know, we're in a drought right now. And so how can we elevate all those other messages? And I just want to make sure we don't lose.
Yeah, I political decision making 101,
I
like
know you-
so I'll tell you, the first thing in class is every single policy choice has winners and losers. There's always trade-offs. And yeah, clearly communicating that I think is crucial, because if it turns out this was the best possible package of
Right.
cuts that we could get, phenomenal governance, great job everybody for getting us there. But explaining why that was the case will help buy the public's trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Just don't want to like lose that like this is rough, but sometimes we're gonna have to be behind the rough.
Yeah.
Remember last year, I mean, the past year, several times we were questioning why there aren't more public comments. How can we make it more enticing for people bringing comments? People will only go through the trouble to make comments to someone when they know their effort is heard. And when they come here, and we can't really go back and forth or make decisions, and they don't see like the result of why they come and how can they get results. And so it's a little bit of a conundrum here, because we have two opportunities to give public comments per month. And yet I think in the past, we just have handful of people coming in. And it really begs the question of our role, our identity, our advocacy, and who are we advising? And it's very important to kind of sort this out, because it also can center how we do things. We're not a group who are just looking for ways to have more meetings.
I think I got you back on schedule.
You did. Well, really quick, how are we looking for public comment on the back?
Okay.
No one's in the room. Is anyone online? Because if no one's online, that means we've got 20 more minutes to job it before we need to end on time.
No one's in the lobby right now.
Okay, I think we can keep going then.
Just a kind of comment on public comment and some of the challenges there. I think one of the harder parts on getting people to want to be present here is most of the time the board has no role in what people are saying. It tends to be a smaller thing that needs to be handled by a staff member. We are not involved at all. We hear them, but it doesn't impact what we're doing as a board really in any way for 90+% of comments. At least that's what I've experienced, right? They're usually, now I think as a community member coming in and knowing you're going to be hearing, you're going to have the top folks of park staff in the room is more than you're going to get in most other instances in terms of your problem being heard. So I think that's a big draw. But us as a draw, we're not doing anything for them. So in their current issue, right? So one of the things that I would love is how are we what is the topic of the day? Do people want to comment on that? What are upcoming topics? Do people like, I would love to hear community input around the things that we are talking about. I think that would be helpful, but it means a lot more outreach that parks would have to do. And social media and whatever, or getting stuff up earlier. Here's the thing, and here's what we would like to hear from folks on, or if there's a big issue surrounding parks, right? Like that we should be engaged on, flagging it for us or whatever. But I understand why community doesn't come to us. We don't give them much on the issues that they experience in the day-to-day. So, and honestly, there's a lot of other mechanisms that Parks has to gather input, which are way easier than coming to a once a month meeting at a very specific time. We are not super convenient, and there are better ways for the public to be able to comment. I would also love us to do a better job at how is Parks gathering input from the public on the issues that we're talking about, and how do we incorporate the public's input and understand it. In addition to the presentations coming from Parks, what outreach have they done, and can they synthesize that for us so we can hear from the community? Because the community doesn't have to come to us for us to hear them. Parks is doing a ton of outreach that we could be engaging with and learning the outcomes from as well. So that's my little.
Just to respond to you quickly, this is kind of, that's all of what you said is what we've been discussing in community engagement working group. And I think Allison and I did a pretty good job of combining two groups that you'll hear about soon. And I think we're getting at most of the points that you just highlighted. So great, just so you know, think about that.
Can I make also one comment? And you'll see this probably in the next meeting when we have Riley and Sarah come and kind of introduce themselves briefly with their work. Now that we have a dedicated person as like a response coordinator on behalf of the director's office, perhaps we can have some of their work and kind of a summary, brief report out of their work included in the director's report month to month. I think that would be at least something to show what community and partners are coming to the director's office about and how we've responded.
That sounds great. They're already proving so invaluable, and it turns out there's a lot that comes in on a daily basis. I quickly discovered having them be able to run them to ground. And I actually think it would be smart to have a report out from them each month on what they're hearing, what's happening with them.
So we will continue to improve.
It's great to meet you all. Definitely open to suggestions on where you think I should be putting time and energy. So really open to, you know the system at this point far better than I do. So if there's specific issue areas or topics that you think I should be myself or team should be looking to, welcome that feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, to end on time, we've got 17 minutes to go through the working group reports.
Before we do that, Michelle, can you send us an update on who's on each committee and what committees need people? Because I think some have, we've had people leave and I feel like there's some holes. And it would be nice to know where we need some bandwidth.
So I've got a roster that I put together myself. I would actually love to just say all of this out loud really quickly and have people shout out if I say something wrong, then I can update it here and I can kick into you.
Perfect.
All right, Board Affairs, myself, Matt, Swen, Adrian, Allison, CEWG liaison, Parks Foundation liaison, ? Myra as the PPA liaison, ? CNR, Sally, Myra, Tommy, Allison, Bill. Good? Land use and infrastructure, Matt, Adrian, Kitty, Patty, Myra, Jessica.
And I am adding,
Wait, which one? I'm sorry.
Land use and infrastructure.
I am rejoining that one.
Ally is on that one.
And I'm the chair.
And you're the chair.
And I'm still on that one.
That too many
Tommy
people.
and Myra is out. Okay, community engagement, Sally, Tommy, Patty, Bill, and Myra.
Yep.
Financial sustainability, Andre, Kitty, Swen, Jessica, Ally, Parks Levy liaison, ? And PBA liaison board, ?
I've been stepping out because I'm on the pack for the park program.
Okay, cutting you off that one.
And I was,
Adrian,
yes.
she's
Adrian's the chair.
And Adrian's the chair, yes.
And I was considering joining that one. I joined till part of one. I don't know if I have the
bandwidth.
And math brain for it, so I'm just gonna go.
I will tell you, let me
Maybe
just tell
common
you that
sense.
this year is gonna be heavily focused in part on like engagement.
Okay, the part that I attended was all just,
Spreadsheets.
and I'm like, I'm not useful at all.
So there's a lot of that as well. But there will also be, if you are interested in playing a larger role in like the community engagement portion on the long range financial sustainability. And also thinking about how we advocate for the special district changes. This would be your place.
Let me talk
and your
to
time.
Adrian, because I'm doing ad hoc and land use, so let me talk to Adrian and see what's what and where I'm.
You would get Ian with the equations.
Can we talk more about that? Because especially after today's working group, after the board retreat here, I think we're talking a lot about like how do we find alignment between groups and themes that we should really be leaning into. And so understanding that engagement is going to be really part of finance will be, I think, will be critical for how we weave together our work through these groups and how we're thinking about that. And so I'm glad you brought that up so that we can like make this a little bit more cohesive and what we're trying to achieve and how we're doing it.
Okay. Reports from working groups. I would like to move board affairs to the back because I've got some motions that to hit everybody with that I think will make the most sense after the other working groups have reported. So can we have land use and infrastructure go first, please?
Yeah, so the last time we met was on June 23rd. We did not meet in July, and then our next meeting is August 25th at 8 a.m. And last time we talked about the neighborhood study that was presented by Karine and Brad. And that was very eye-opening, just looking at how we look at data. And then the next I kept the topics very simple so that we actually have more time for discussions. And then we talk about policy for park bench removal because of all the vandalism and discussions were robust. There wasn't a lot of it's more about fact finding on trying to find out what are some of the policies that we can massage a little bit. But otherwise, to be continued, today's retreat will identify maybe some sense of the meeting agenda for the meeting end of this month, so that our new group with Alice joining us, we can maybe kind of realign some of what is our role in that group, other than getting just like there's a fire, oh, let's look at that. So I think that's not very effective if we just keep looking at things that needs our attention.
Be more proactive.
Yeah.
Thank you. Community engagement.
I'll keep this brief and I'll let you take lead on the rest, but I don't think we really met last time. We've been thinking about what does this really look like and what are some of those goals moving forward. And to that,
Thanks. Yeah, our last meeting was in June as well. We actually received the same presentation as land use and infrastructure from Brett and Karine from Parks Planning Department. The neighborhood park study was something that interested I think me mostly, and then kind of brought it to the group in that our focus has been a lot around accessibility and the study being around whether or not parks initiate gentrification. Apparently there was a word on the street that parks were initiating gentrification, so they wanted to dig in and do some data collection. And their conclusions were that neighborhood parks do not initiate gentrification. There were some marginal increases to monthly rents very close to parks, apparently less than 1%. And they found that existing parks don't data-wise impact vulnerability or displacement. So we peppered them with some questions around kind of the impetus for the study, their work with Eco Northwest, which was the consultant. And that was just very interesting to
But since then, we've been talking some at the Board Affairs working group committee around the future of culture, nature, recreation, since we have a lot of overlap, not only with topics, but members with community engagement. We've been looking a lot at accessibility, trying to get more of a pipeline to community data, and then more access to community itself, like through public comment and other means. So with all of that overlap and a few of our members recently stepping down with Corbin and someone else recently, Sabrina. We thought to strengthen community engagement, we could combine the groups and still keep alive some of the priorities that we had with culture, nature, recreation, mostly being the accessibility and access to community data pieces. So we'll be digging into that more this afternoon and really look forward to talking with folks who we haven't really discussed this as a group. So determining how we can focus and prioritize and put together a strong group.
Yeah, that brings it to Board Affairs, where this was also a topic of conversation. I'm not going to be making a motion for that at this meeting. I think the idea is that we can discuss it all as a group at the retreat, and then if it's something that we want to proceed with, we could do that at the next meeting. I had some trepidation about this because of how much community engagement is specifically called out in the underlying empowering ordinance for the Parks Board and in our bylaws. But I was successfully convinced that this would be a way of actually enhancing that work. And I think that there is a good case for it because both CNR and CEWG have 5 members on them right now. And, in any given month, 1 or 2 people are not available. That just does not leave a very deep bench for conducting this work, especially if we're trying to task this group with really being our lead on soliciting relevant public comments, making sure that we have people signed up and ready and willing to do advocacy and to show up to community events. That's just a lot of work to put on, the 2, 3, 4 people who can make themselves available on a regular basis. So I think for that reason alone, it's something that I support, but I'm looking forward to discussing in a larger group. Other things we talked about at Board Affairs, you'll notice that financial sustainability is kind of conspicuously absent from the retreat agenda and from our board agenda today. The discussion there was just that until we get more information from Parks, until they kind of call the ball on which direction they want to go, what advice do we have to give beyond you guys need to make a decision and actually get the ball moving on this? Not to overuse sports metaphors. And then just discussion on what we wanted the agenda today to be for both the board meeting and the retreat. So then a couple motions that we also discussed. Portland Parks Alliance ran a parallel outreach effort to City Council during all the conversations around the budget. That's something we talked about when I attended their meeting. Something that we discussed was that we would get a lot of benefit out of having a liaison between the Parks Board and PBA, someone who can just be our point person for keeping a line of communication open and can be the point person for when the inevitable next outreach campaign to City Council starts, can help coordinate our 2 groups. Myra volunteered for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to make a motion to officially appoint Myra as the liaison between Parks Board and PBA, term of 1 year and duties as just said. Can I get a second? All right. Any discussion, debate? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you. All opposed? And all abstaining, motion carries unanimously. What else? There was one other thing. Ex officio members. So per our bylaws, we can have 4 ex officio members on the board. We already have 1, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that it's really beneficial for all of us to have you here. And I think that we can expand that a bit. The Levy Oversight Committee was flagged as an area to have input from an ex officio member. I would want to, it means that they are not an official member of the board. They don't go through the normal appointment process through City Council. They just join essentially as our guest, but they have all the same privileges minus voting as board members do. So Public Levy Oversight Committee having an ex officio member join from them, with their duties being to attend the Financial Sustainability Working Group and if they want, also attend board meetings. I would want to keep the terms for any ex officio members, except for Jessica, shorter than we currently do, set to just 1 year. So that if for whatever reason we need to pivot, we're not locked into like a 3 or a 5 year time frame. That was a concern that was raised. So I would like to make a motion to invite a PLOC member onto the board as an ex officio member on a financial sustainability working group. All in favor? All opposed? All abstaining? Motion carries unanimously, chair not voting.
I
Audrey?
didn't.
Have you talked to them?
They have reached out to us about, or Michelle, can you speak to that? I think they reached out to us about that, right?
Yes,
Cool.
and Sarah.
I actually reached out to you about that.
Right, that's
So they haven't, we didn't want to invite them unless we knew it was a possibility, so,
Do you know who?
no, we haven't raised it with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we didn't know if you all would be interested in the idea.
Yep, interested,
Do
confirmed.
you also sit on there as ex?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And also, I'm on the financial, so I'll see all of them all the time.
Interesting.
Okay, and then I think we've also discussed having someone from PBA come on as an ex officio member, but that's an area where I think we want to have some more discussion before Portland Parks PPA, Portland Parks Alliance, that year it's not too. I said PBA. But we're gonna have some more discussion there before we proceed with that, but that was also a topic of discussion for Board Affairs. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Yes.
In terms of someone coming over from Portland Parks Alliance, I just want to say there's some great former board members who are a part of it, who would be great candidates who already know how we work, like Erin.
Erin's
And
already thrown her hat into the ring.
it would be, I would say that that's a very like low risk level to bring someone like Erin on, especially if we can be choosy with folks, because a lot of former Portland Parks board members are a part of the alliance.
Is she interested in?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
And Erin's great.
I would also kind of say that if we are sending someone from us over, I think it makes sense that they would be open to having them be ex officio as well. So, I mean, I don't know how much more discussion or what questions you specifically have on this, but I would be happy to just move forward with that.
Very good. Looking at the agenda, confirming again, do we have anyone online for public comment?
No one in the lobby.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, quick review of action items that I took down, just during this Control F action item. Oh, looks like you already sent out the PGE Harperton
He did.
thing. Okay, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I don't think we need to have a motion.
Oh, we can just adjourn?
Yes.
Yay.
Yay. So what I'll do is I'll stop